Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another robotics lab with the 2MK team. Today we are looking at our relatively far along Dragon Ball FighterZ bot and the variations required to make it work. The last time you saw this would have been in a past robotics lab, which we did titled and labeled Future Sons. If you've been using the bot or whatever you saw since then without modification, we have made some changes and you will need some explanation based on that. Despite the fact that this is not functionally a disk guidance, I am still going to spend some time explaining the inputs and the reasons. So I'm going to go relatively directly into it because there's a lot to cover and it may take some time to explain it all clearly. But let's start with the simplest of possible inputs. Note I have everything set to 0 at the moment simply so that I can switch them all to 100 easily, not necessarily because I want to do anything specific about it. Given that I've done all of the messing around, I won't also not be going into information on how to change your buttons to make it easier to record on pad or whatever. I'm just going to reset mine to what I would consider my normal and work from there. So we have the record and play. The record is now out of the way, again back on the L3 stick. I had moved it to a face button. You often will need to do that for our type of recordings. I suggest triangle if you're used to our other bots because it's close to where the option button is. So, the main things we need, given that Dragon Ball FighterZ is a simplistic game relatively in terms of inputs, come down to the following. We need some quarter circle, forward and back motions, which is what actions 1 and 2 are. Note that Cooler is the bot in this case. We also delayed this somewhat because we wanted to see what those characters were like, if they had anything special that they needed us to add, any weird inputs or different timings of inputs than other characters. But 17 and Cooler seem to be mostly fine in terms of being normal along the rest of the cast line, so we're activating the bot now with action 1 alone. This is a quarter circle forward motion, but the important thing, even though it makes it look as if we were mashing the assist button, is that actually the assist button is held the entire time. This is important because without this you will not be able to get the CPU to do... what do we actually call it when you call in someone else to the super? But it becomes impossible to do this, and certain other aspects of it such as forward switches become difficult. To save on space, we made sure that only assist 1 is on this quarter circle forward motion. You can put assist 2 on it, really doesn't matter, just make sure that the two are different. Even though you are supposed to hold the button the entire time, because the recording is started by hitting the button, you may not get this perfect. But it doesn't seem to matter because the game doesn't read it that way. The important thing is to get the holding done, and if you can make sure to hold it down for the entire duration, that's really good. But more so focus on the beginning and the ending of it, and that you've been holding it for some period of time. The faster this input is, the more useful it is to you. So try not to do it too slowly. This is the same. It can be a little off as noted. Again, the point is mostly to hold that button, get a quarter circle in there, So you see our quarter circle back, even though the button was hit a little early without any actual direction input. Quarter circle back is what matters here. As long as you are using the standard recovery on assist, this is just giving them quarter circle motions. It doesn't have another purpose. The assist is there purely to help call in people more often. Back on the stick with assist will also give you the charge stuff in certain situations, but you don't really need that. The chain stuff, sorry. With certain situations, you don't really need it. And raw assist, in this case, is helpful because raw assist will be different than starting with, for example, the switch in that you could get sometimes. But it is still possible to get that switch in, especially since calling standard assist in the middle of certain combos doesn't seem to work properly, so you'll get the occasional moment where it is forward and assist to call in people. That'll happen less often, which is probably good given what our bots are probably for. So that covers where the quarter circle motions in the bot comes from, and obviously since it's Dragon Ball FighterZ, just 2 quarter circle motions is enough to cover a ton of things, in fact nearly everything in the game. What we need from there, therefore, since this is our standard edge shifting, is to start sneaking in some buttons that come at the beginning of other inputs, so that we can get supers, normals, EX moves, etc. Here, for example, we have the Dragon Rush. And we put into the Dragon Rush a couple mashes of light. 3 will do. This is for the rhythmic purpose, as you can see here. If you can get it just right, you will get the air smash off the Dragon Rush, you will get the light auto combo. All by itself, no directions required, just hit light plus medium, light, 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 end. That's all you have to do. You can even have a slight delay at the beginning, but it would obviously help if you could mash it all easily and make sure this doesn't happen. A note that will come up later, but I will mention it now just in case you don't get to go too far into the stream. This particular input, whereas all others will be normally set to 100 in terms of how often they're played back, this one should generally, for any character set you are using, be set to 50%. It is the only one that is like this in terms of using simple bot settings. The simple bot settings with everything at 100, that particular one action 3 is set to 50. So here is 4. 4 is more or less the same thing, but a little different. We are using the heavy plus special to give us the super dash. While you are in the air for the super dash, we are mashing medium to get the medium auto combo in certain situations. Once you've made contact, or just after that, as soon as you realize, hey, my character is no longer in the air, stop hitting medium. You can hit it a couple more times, it makes no difference. And then quickly go heavy special. This can be a little bit hard to properly input depending on what you're doing and how your medium button normally is, how you're used to mashing it, but just put them in whatever configuration you want to get this to work. This one is the one you often have to change your stuff for. If you let this hit you, normally nothing much happens, but you should be able to get most of the medium auto combo. And in certain timings it will give you the super, but not usually. We don't really want the system to be doing the super at the end of the medium auto combo because that is just damage, it doesn't do anything. The light auto combo similarly doesn't do anything at the end because, again, they're here to teach you to deal with mix-ups and pressure, and we don't care too much which form of damage they do once they start. So once again, basically you're hitting what is the equivalent of the vanish button, mashing medium. You can probably mash it super fast if you want, but we generally suggest not doing it as fast, And as soon as you have recognized that super dash is over, your character has gone for another move, hit special, and then, sorry, hit heavy and then special. Chances are, correctly timed, which it does not have to be super precise. The heavy will be hit while you're still in the air, the special will be hit just as you land, and then you can just end the recording. You don't have to think too much about this one in terms of making sure it's what you see on the screen here. It should just work regardless, as long as you were not too far away when you did it. Mid-screen is fine. Just don't do it from too close. You need a little bit of poking with your medium. Action 5 has been changed since the last time you saw this, just as 2 has. 2 was originally just one medium hit, and as we did mention that we were going to change it to another quarter circle, but I didn't specifically say that that had been done. So they're in categories now, sorta. You have the first 2, which are quarter circle inputs, the second 2, which are auto combos, and now we're into something else. So slot 5 has been changed from what it was, which I don't even remember because it wasn't important, and is now special based blast combos, or auto combos, depending on how you want to look at it. Depends on the character. In this case, we are mashing special, but we're mashing it under a particular condition. You're wiggling back and forth on the stick a little bit. Not to the level of trying to specifically do a quarter circle motion, but if you do, there's no big loss, really. The idea here is simple. We want to be able to mash that special button for characters who do multi-blast, and make sure that we have enough different directions with special that we can get other stuff. We don't care about deflect, actually, which is why we can get to the back motion in this not having the special on it. Meaning, when you input this, you can mash special while wiggling on the bottom of the stick, and just press back and the end recording button, so that the only way it should do a move is if it gets back to there. But again, it doesn't even really matter if you get to back at all. Wiggling is fine. Slot 6 is similar. Different thing though. This is starting with a crouch medium, because this matters a lot in neutral. From that crouch medium, do 1 or 2 hits of standing medium, and then, if you are familiar with how to do this in this game, jump cancel that medium. If you do this correctly, you may need to mash a little bit more to get it to do exactly what this is doing. If you do this correctly, what will actually often happen, for some reason with the timing, and we found really useful, is that the character will, instead of true jump cancelling their stuff, do their overhead. We were going to fix this, but then realized this is actually probably better. There is also a timing at which they will jump cancel, but it's extremely rare, which is also useful. If you're the type of person that can get the jump cancel every time, it's probably still alright, because the spacing for a lot of this stuff is strict, and it will usually come out either way. Also, if you're the sort of person that can jump cancel easily on demand, you probably don't need a bot that does overheads. But you should check on it and see what you get, because it does change somewhat. The main purpose of this is to, again, make you deal with the medium and neutral. It makes you deal with the slide and the stand after the slide, and it makes you deal with the overhead, which is an important thing to learn in terms of just seeing what every character's overhead looks like. It also has the capacity to create a jump, but not very often. It's still useful to have such a jump though, because the characters don't actually jump that much in our bots as is, so we actually had to change some other stuff and install more jumps, which is where we are with Action 7 and 8. So Action 7 is new altogether. We have assessed Cooler, 17, all of the newer characters that have come out, and decided, okay, we don't actually need that much for you guys, but now we need more jumping and air movement to be confusing, based on some stuff that 17 does. So, we now have a crouching heavy, and as you can see, there is a an air backdash in it. So it is crouching heavy, which you can again hit. If you are setting it to a face button, you can set it to another face button, you can hit at the same time. It's very helpful that if you hit the face buttons for record and attack together, it records the attack. From there you want a upward back jump, i.e. 7, depending on your preferability for anime notation. Back jump, back dash, and then just down and end, or just end. It doesn't really matter too much. The important thing is that you start with the crouch heavy, because a lot of characters have air crouch heavy stuff, and you need to be able to see their spacings for this. As you can see, Cooler, for example, seems to go like almost as far forward as he went back when he does this. He is not actually forward dashing at any point, he's just doing his crouch heavy in the air. He's a super strange character, definitely. The timing, as you can see, is also such that if this loops into itself, for whatever reason, you get that. And while it would look as if he will backdash out of that every time, he shouldn't always do it. Once you start combining with other things. This is because of the way the heavy that does the chain works. But there's a good chance that he'll do that a lot of the time. Fortunately, certain other things will combo properly, and you don't care that much because, again, being launched and then air comboed would just be damaging and not really teach you that much. You should learn to tech out of things and so on, based on more complex ones than your opponent doing their auto combo and back beating you up. So, finally, we have the slot 8, which is a little more complicated in terms of how you input it. Slot 8 is a light rolling 2 light plus special. You can blink it, you can have a small delay within it, but if you're using a stick, you probably want to piano it, and if you're using a pad, depending on the size of your thumb and how you do it, you want to more or less flow from one button into the other. And then backdash. And end the recording. This is actually all you want to do. The main reason for this timing is because you want to hit back at the same moment that you hit the special button the second time, or just before that, if you're only hitting it once. Again, it's not too important exactly how you do it, but you are aiming to time the special hit and be back at the same moment. Whether or not you're still pressing light is irrelevant. As you can see, both the light, even though it's hard to see because it's cooler, the little down elbow thing he's doing is light attack, and he's also doing his deflect, as well as a backdash in there. You want to do this all very quickly so that this is basically as random as possible, because this input is eaten by a lot of other inputs. If you find that that's not happening for the character you want to check, you generally want to reduce this one as well. So, let's discuss new characters and how we can use these to learn new characters. We're going to turn everything on to the standard setting for bots, and I'll hand it over to Amara for her to use her own characters and poke at some things. So once again, I'm setting everything to 100 except action 3, which will be set to around 50. It doesn't actually matter if it's specifically 50. But you can tell when it's 50 because of this. So maybe it will be easier to remind yourself by setting it to 49. One way or another, we are now going into a raw full demonstration without much explanation of why these things happen or how they work. At the moment, the meters are set to just one of each, but we have everything set at the moment so that they have full meter because reasons. Pure defense here is relatively easy. We have sorted these in the way we have so that you can see specific things. Movement can be turned on and off, X forms of movement. The special meter related stuff can be turned on and off. Assist related stuff can be turned on and off, or reduced. The only things you will always have to have in the bot, as far as we're aware, are the super dash, the medium auto combo, and if you want certain specials, obviously the assists, or you would have to turn it back on. But assists are a large part of why you would ever need a bot in this game, so we didn't consider it necessary to take it out in any way. Again, since Dragon Ball is a relatively simplistic game and is mostly a matter of chain combinations of specific things, this too works well for our bots. They are functionally just chain combinations of specific things, but most importantly, the things they are chaining are put together in the specific order that will let them get full stuff out of it. The edge shifting allows them to have any super you need, basically, since they use both the light plus medium and heavy plus special options, and the quarter circle forward and back are separate from those options. There is always a chance of a combination of quarter circle back or quarter circle forward plus any of those things, leading to the activation of literally any super available. We made sure, as noted, to get the potential for the air backdash stuff, because now you should have air backdash into both Dragon Rush, honestly, and Super Dash, which is super important to get used to. Again, you can take this out if you really want. But overall, it should work out fine to just have it. That means that they have both the capacity for raw Super Dash from the ground and air Super Dash as well. I've been doing some experiments to get their Android barriers and other down moves in here. But we'll see. But you can see here we also have the capacity for back jump into switch. Lots of switch options come in so you can get used to this relatively important mechanic in the game, while still doing it at around the correct spacing and rate. Forward jumps, therefore, are not usually seen as important here, even though quite a few characters have some corner mix-ups that are based on those moves. The important thing in getting in those combination-style supers was so that if you ever meet an opponent who knows how to cover a lot of space with them, you can simply choose those three characters and be relatively confident that at some point you're going to start to see those combinations. You can always obviously change their meter to give them more opportunities to do the same thing. Some of our other changes have meant that technically, even though it should be extremely rare, if they have enough meter, they should be able, barely able, to do super into level 3 super. The timing for this may also be varied as well, so just by this, the bot should have literally every possible move available for that character in this game. But completely random. What you can count on though is that they are not going to combo you supremely, they are not going to try to play a specific range, and nearly anything it does can be tweaked in terms of how often it happens so that you, as the player, can get more or less used to it. If you find it's doing too much of something, just use the timer thing to tell it to do less of that. The important thing was to separate the components so that when this happens, you don't lose too many other aspects of the game. For example, you can prevent them from using EX moves by lessening that crouch heavy style input without losing too much, because crouch heavy is not something you see a lot in neutral or need a lot of. Stand heavy, for example, is also available, but only very rarely, because of the way that the heavy comes out in the auto combo string, and because of a specific interaction we have somewhere else, which I explain because it's relatively long. But as you can see, it's right there. So let's look at that a little bit and immediately demonstrate why it is that we don't want certain things at full power. Let's change this auto combo here back to 100. This effect is subtle, but it is there. If for whatever reason you were having trouble with a character's actual light auto combo, which is quite possible, you absolutely can increase it to that amount. But the main reason why this wants to be reduced at least somewhat is because it throws off the rhythm of other moves. It also creates a situation where it leaves the bot more open more often using the air dragon rush, and causes it to use certain things without having any spacing consideration. We have not found a lot of characters where this is a positive thing. Generally, the usefulness of having that input come out less has to do with the fact that when you are normally recovering, given that it's a generally shorter input, there isn't a whole lot that the bot will end up doing with it. Even if it does come out, it'll probably get caught in the middle and you don't care about it. Like that, it'll get eaten up by some other input. In short, that input needs to sneak through the animations and timings of everything else. And unlike the medium, where usually it will actually come out as something useful, because the medium starts with the super dash, which is much less vulnerable. If it ended up in a normal situation, you'll just get super dashing happening. The Dragon Rush is not useful for this. You don't want it sneaking through and just randomly Dragon Rushing often. However, if you do find that you have trouble tackling Dragon Rushes, then probably you want to do that and spend less time with the backward air dash form. However, you could of course leave the other standard background. But one of the other most important reasons is that when you start to turn off other inputs, if that one is remaining at 100 and you do need it for certain things, for example if you were trying to keep Dragon Rush in while dealing with other things, it starts to dominate in ways that you probably don't want. So let's turn off the inputs for the movement altogether. Now, even though the others have not changed from 100, the obvious issue here is that it's now choosing from a smaller pool of things to do. And as soon as that happens, you'll notice that there's a drastic increase in the amount of time it spends doing this auto combo because the balance has changed. Most of the time from there, the light auto combo itself has an animation at the end, a small one, which tends to quote-unquote eat the inputs that come after it. Meaning that if the light auto combo happens to come out, and then it randomly switches to another thing right after, and then back to said light auto combo, you're just going to get more and more of that. With the medium, we don't care about this, because the timing and the distance matter in the case of the medium one. The medium one, at least you have a question of how many mediums will I get? Will it super dash? Will it use special? Will it use heavy? But the light one, in order for it to work properly, we need to have the minimal amount of time in it, and as a result, it slows down quite a lot. Furthermore, it causes issues with the super as shown, because if it does not connect under certain circumstances, it leads to things then generally no good player will ever do, specifically going from their light auto combo into raw super for no reason. Whereas with the medium one, if the medium auto combo hits, as mentioned before, there's always a delay at the end added by that heavy and special that makes it much less likely for the super to be activated. And if it is activated, there's enough of a delay and weirdness that you can't be sure that you're going to be ready for it. Furthermore, the more auto combos you find yourself facing, the harder it is to tell them apart, and so on. So, let's go a step further and turn off the special mashing form of this, because not every character has anything involving mashing specials that matters to you. That is 5, I believe, so we are turning that off. So we still have the auto combos. We still have the assist stuff. We have much less movement. We still have some switches. At this point, the character bot is just more or less a freight train that comes forward at you. But now it's super random and not actually using anything even remotely approaching proper staging. So it's relatively easy to keep out. And this format of it might be good for dealing with characters who have really good super dashes or super dashes you should deal with often. But it's still not that useful. It's just a lot of blocking. And it's a lot of blocking with a lot of randomness in it. You can use it for deflects and stuff, and to learn certain ranges from certain characters. But just note that the more you do this, the more you are likely to just get caught in light auto combo, knocked down like that, and then something like this will happen. The rhythm of the bot is affected. To some extent affected a lot, even though it's not really obvious right away, because you haven't gotten used to seeing how it works when it's actually functioning correctly as yet. But above all else, it adds predictability, which is generally not what you want in a bot, and you can get more and more predictable by changing it. But now let's change that back to 50%. We're changing action 3 to 50, or in this case 49. Whenever you see it turn yellow is when it's right. And proceeding from there. Even with just those on. You're still going to be mostly just blocking this constantly oncoming freight train. But what should happen is that at least some of the time, you'll notice that the bot stays quiet a bit longer. This is because the assist buttons don't necessarily do anything in themselves, so it's more likely to sometimes just spend some time mashing assist without actually moving and then doing something. That twitchiness that I am not necessarily going to move right now is really useful in a lot of ways, and you can obviously, in this setup, tweak it so that the bot spends a lot more time in that state. But you don't want to have to be very, very minutely setting this all the time. And you don't really want to lower the things that let it do specials too much, because then it would just not do anything useful. However, you can afford to lower things that let it do supers, which is mostly what that light auto combo machine does. So you can see that the flow is a bit more as you'd expect. Fishing with mediums, which actually have a chance to hit you for a lot of characters. And only occasionally using the Dragon Rush and light auto combo stuff. When you are down to just 4 or 5 inputs and you lower one of them to half, you've changed the ratios quite a bit more than it would initially seem based on what we've observed so far. You basically made it go from 20% to less than 10% by doing this. It would seem as if you changed it to 10%, but everything else is slightly out of phase, so no. It's actually less than 10% when you drop it to 50. We are obviously going to have quite a lot of information about how to tweak the bot specifically to do more or less of certain things, how to even make it defend more rather than attacking, and even more importantly, which is interesting, because of the way that they have set up the characters in this game, quite a lot of them work such that if they have offensive play styles, they tend to use quarter circle forward moves, and if they have defensive playstyles, they have a lot of quarter circle back moves. This is really helpful in terms of the bot, because the quarter circle back is less likely to make them fail to block. They'll probably manage to clip the block somewhere in that switching motion that we made. So, while we're showing off Cooler and all that, this is not exactly a great team in terms of synergy, although they do seem to be doing some really interesting things with the super. Let's switch to our standard team. Our general expectation for using the bot in this form is that your opponents are the following: Cell, Adult Gohan, and usually the third character does not matter too much, but for the sake of starting off, we will be using Android 16. And I don't care about colors. We'll be leaving the inputs as they are to show what happens while you add things back, but also just to give a general idea of how the bot is meant to be used in its core systems for this team. For each other team, you're going to have to come up with all sorts of stuff. We may put some tips on there, especially if particular teams become really popular or have tricky mix-ups that generally this will probably activate on its own, but we don't know for sure. The key to this team basically is that they have long sliding normals in one character, well, no, two actually, and basically command grab potential, as well as zoning and some decent combinations with their supers that are more so about you recognizing that something bad is about to happen than anything else. Not to mention Gohan's relatively frustrating instant teleporting things. Therefore, this team's job as the main demo for the bot is to get you used to the idea that you have to deal with a bunch of weird ranges and unseen or instant long-range attacks. Their potential for assist lockdowns is much less, thankfully, but they do have good things in that you can use the standard style beam assist, as well as Gohan's invincible-ish uppercut assist to change faces. In other words, their purpose as assists and this team's composition is to make the setup as visually complicated as possible with the maximum number of very fast reactions. This is the form of the bot that is difficult, and therefore you can use it to judge whether or not you can keep up with the bot as is, whether or not you need to reduce anything it does, or whether or not you just need to pick different characters who play a bit more linearly and get used to it that way. They also don't tend to have supers that whiff too much. 16s do, but you don't care about that. They're also decently good at building heaters, so you actually risk facing combination supers or level 3s and similar things. Using our BD mashup, therefore, the bot does, at least, even without understanding anything else about it, help you understand how to use that aspect of it. It will force you to block correctly from generally quite far away. And it will give you a lot of insight into situations in which you can and should deflect. Therefore, it is entirely possible to start from just defense, which is useful too. Since the bot is very likely to use its meter quite soon after getting it, although we're not seeing that now, as mentioned, it can, with this team, definitely hold on to it for quite a while. Especially with the current setup. Note that despite the fact that, overall, it is not really that much less likely to hit buttons that will start supers, you still get things like this happening. Fortunately, both Adult Gohan and Cell have the capacity to use basically full screen level 3 supers, which you can in fact vanish and therefore would get that experience somewhat. But they don't do air ones, making it more likely that you'll be able to just play it out normally. You can already see that Amara has more or less got this spacing down for a lot of things that she's doing. And in just pure zoning, can keep the opponent away for the most part without worrying too much. Adult Gohan and Cell also have some good cross-up mix-ups and, in Gohan's case, really good corner carry. And he's a relatively easy character in the sense that you don't need to understand too much about him to achieve that corner carry, which means that the bot manages more or less without stress. Cell, in turn, has his omnidirectional super, which gives you different situations you have to deal with. And since they don't tend to advance too much when it's not the Gohan, they'll generally use stuff that you can easily see. It doesn't come up too much in that sense either. So you can absolutely train your defense even without the opponents having any of their movement options active or any of their various blasts with their special weapons. In fact, we're probably not even going to turn those back on until the end because none of these characters really benefit from them. But here we have, for example, having to deal with 16 level 3, which is a command grab. And you get used to the fact that defending is not always the answer, that sometimes you're just going to take damage. And most importantly, gives you the feeling that, hey, I really should at least sometimes counterattack, which is the next aspect of it. So, let's go back and turn on their movement options now. Returning back on actions 7 and 8 together because it doesn't make sense really generally to turn them off separately. And we're just continuing from here, leaving off 5, which is again not really necessary for this particular setup, and leaving the other 50% because, as mentioned, we generally will do that. For Gohan, this leads to a lot more slow movement and a lot more use of blast style attacks in neutral, But overall, because of both the rhythm and speed of that particular attack style, nothing too much changes here, which is good. In short, many characters are too busy moving around in terms of attacking me to use their back jump and similar things. But they will use it, and this is enough to set up certain situations. This is where we mentioned things coming in like the importance of a particular character and whether or not certain aspects of the bot will be on. These particular characters don't really demonstrate too well what the purpose of the motion-based ones are because they just don't use them that much. So, rather than continuing this way, let's show the other side of it. The characters who are on the opposite spectrum, who are both, for various reasons, the easiest to fight, technically, and most frustrating at the same time, for this are Super Saiyan Vegeta, regular Super Saiyan Vegeta, Beerus, and either fused Zamasu, who we will be showing off for the sake of it, or Frieza. Generally you shouldn't mix and match. It is really just Zamasu or Frieza depending on what you are interested in learning, because you need Vegeta and Beerus to do a particular thing in the team. So let us change the stage to something simpler, but we will never change the music because this is the best music in the game.
Time to begin the match.
Oh, I picked Vegito by mistake. Ugh. That's what happens when you stand. How did I even get there? That was weird. I'm going to assume that I stopped paying attention in the middle of what I was doing. This is a common thing for me. But it specifically says like Vegeta Super Saiyan. Here we go. This one will be demonstrating with and without that special mashing input on. Oh good, nice bright standout color. You can see that Beerus is, something. Yeah. Beerus is basically the same principle bot-wise, long, sliding, crouch, medium. Decent use of his super dash, and so on. Zamasu has long normals and a bunch of weird things he can do at particular spaces, so he's much harder to deal with as well. but also has more tendency than others to get away from you after the super dash and not specifically try to do anything. 16 and Gohan, on the other hand, were more likely to actually hit you and Cell could do some stuff. But these characters are more likely to get the super dash but not really manage to do anything after it. This changes their rhythm and makes them more likely to play defensively. But this was required. You can also use Trunks in certain situations if for some reason Beerus was really frustrating to you. But Trunks tends to stick to you in a particular way and the rhythm doesn't work as well. Or rather, the combination of supers and similar does not work as well. But it does depend on who you're playing. Sometimes Trunks is the better option. Whoever gives you trouble, voila. But as you can see, because of the way these characters' moves work, they're much less likely to be coming forward at you in the same way, and much more likely to be spending a lot of more time chilling out at the other side of the screen, and then suddenly approaching through specials. Their timing involves a lot of poking, getting away, distracting you with one thing, and then doing another, that sort of stuff. They're functionally harder to defend, therefore. But in the strictest sense of understanding what they're doing, they're less difficult because you're not constantly feeling pressure. While they're not actually doing anything to the equivalent of zoning, basically when they super dash they're easier to punish or watch out for. When they do certain mediums and specials and normals, they are easier to see as a whole or easier to defend, one of the two. And they're a good way to get the other side of your habits. If you find yourself autopiloting through things and then it becomes a problem in matches because your opponent doesn't do those things, this is the tune to switch to get yourself to stop autopiloting because these ones don't care. It will, of course, as I mentioned, feel easier to deal with as a whole. Because this is, again, you're fighting a team who is not fighting to kill you by constantly pressuring you. They're doing so by moving into a particular situation and making it easier or harder that way. But let's try turning on that last action. Give them the ability to mash the special button, and not too much change. But the amount of time you spend in particular spaces on screen does. Since their rhythm also changes, it leads to a lot of weird, let's call it mix-ups. But it gets even easier overall to deal with them. A lot of their flow gets eaten up by that mashing. And you don't get the benefit that much. Of course, it does help Zamasu with certain inputs, so there's that too. But overall, they become a little more annoying, but remain basically easy. Vegeta doesn't even make a particularly good use of it unless you turn off some other inputs. But that's okay, because no one was particularly scared of that move from Vegeta anyway. You can, as mentioned, use this to become used to just about any team in the game. And if you are familiar with our Kame House lobbies, we'll now go into some relatively familiar looking demonstrations. Now that everything is set up. We will not, for the purposes of this, be tweaking or changing the input to be more or less like the player in question. That is usually an exercise to you as the user, because only you know what your opponents tend to do most of the time. But let's start with some familiar teams and demonstrate just exactly how much you can get out of the bot by doing this. Note again that not everything will be in synergy, but I'm using teams that we already know to have some form of synergy that people intended to use. So let's start with OmniRabbit's team of Krillin, I think it's color 5. It might be 6, he'll probably correct me by the time I get around there. But no, it is not Krillin that starts, it is Trunks that starts. And I can probably get colors in a bit. Adult Gohan. This would almost be faster the other way, but then you have to do the other part. And our beloved Krillin. Who I'm also going to guess is color 6. Or 5. Well, whatever, let it rock.
A fierce showdown is about to begin.
So Amara is going to switch to mostly defending now. Both to take a break from the overstimulation of this game and to demonstrate some of the pressure and things that come up as a result. Nope, I got the color wrong. So you can already see that this isn't specifically headed towards the same level of play or intention that OmniRabbit has, but that's again not really the purpose of our Dragon Ball FighterZ bot. Learning to fight a particular person has a lot more to do with understanding them and your openings. This is about creating them by understanding the moves that can be punished and not. Combinations of assists, however, you can learn something about. And if you're familiar with the characters, you can tell whenever you would have taken bigger damage than the bot is able to do. Oh, I got the down in here. That was a bit of effort. So do bear that in mind. Generally, the aim is not to make sure that you can get what your opponent is doing per se. After all, our bots are never really intended to recreate people, although sometimes we get close. Particular people, I guess. It is to give you the vision and idea of, can I counter this? Can I stop this? What happens if they try this here? How likely am I to get caught up in whatever assist nonsense you can see? As noted, this team is probably not one that benefits from the special button mashing being on or not. So we could turn it off for them, but we're not actually going to bother doing that right now. But you can definitely use it to get used to their ranges and their combos. Fortunately, all the other characters are for the most part straightforward, so that's partially why we started here. It's not going to be too difficult, just off of understanding the flow of the game and getting used to seeing certain things and reacting to them. For Amara to build up a generally per character concept of how this works. Against this character, do crouch heavy after they super dash. Against this character, do something else. And so on. These are minor important things to learn per character if you're having fun. And since, of course, as I said, BD Mashup is about managing to increase your defense first and your meter usage second. You can already see she's the perfect person to demonstrate this, as she is the one of us most capable of instantly adapting to being able to do defensive maneuvers. In other words, the person that will block most things on reaction, probably most of the time manage to crouch heavy super dashes, those sorts of things. Don't count on me to demonstrate this sort of thing, because I'm generally more aiming to get out of the thing. Similarly, you can learn spacings for your moves versus theirs, and all those things. Learning your recovery and back spacing also helps. And as you've noted already, for whatever reason, this particular team tends to sit on their meter a bit. Probably because of how Trunks' supers work. Teams that don't have air supers will often be set up that way in this, no matter what you did. Any form of bot whatsoever would have that limitation. Characters that are good at spending time in the air and launching attacks from there will tend to build up even more meter like that. They will also switch less often, overall leading to more or less the same things. As your defense against bots increases, their chances to open you up in particular ways also changes and reduces the amount of meter usage that they do for most characters. So, this game is effectively our control. You've gotten to see how they generally interact with all sorts of things, but they're relatively simplistic in that regard. Let's move on to our oppressive players team. Basically, Brawly, 16, and Cell is going to be similar to what we've seen before. Oh, let's try 3.
Get ready for battle!
Since previously we've seen 16 and Cell and we have a decent idea of how they utilize this bot rhythm, Brawly is the only wild card here, meaning you should also have a decent reference point for what should be going on. But the combination also matters still, both in terms of what assists are available and certain interactions. This is another team that doesn't benefit too much from having that special button mash, as mentioned. Honestly, Brawly does better with it than the other two, honestly. But if you want to still have the flow right, you normally need to leave it on for most characters. Brawly is a good demonstration of how defense needs to change because of an ability added to the character without any change to the bot really. Brawly is able to put up the barrier and therefore resist attempts to zone him with being similar, and you have to take this into account when you're doing this. So Yuffie is a generally troublesome character to have in here because if he does grab you with that, he will in fact kill your character and force you to restart the training, but this is relatively easy, it's just hitting the reset button. It might just be hard to remember that you're actually down a character now. Broly also, as we've mentioned on various streams, has a much stronger capacity for moves after the super dash. And that's one of the main things he's likely to end up demonstrating while in this form. This team is also one that would probably manage better without at least some of the fat dash inputs or jump back inputs, because they don't really need them. But they are still relatively visually frustrating once Cell gets involved anyway. And Broly has that whole, you should probably parry deflect after I do super dashes because otherwise you have to deal with buttons. Still, another thing these bots are for is that aspect of it, to force you to constantly quickly adapt to a different style from each character, which is what on the Rabbit team does not necessarily do. Cell is able to fight from far better than Broly for sure, and better than 16 to some extent. So recognizing when you have the opponent's character has changed, taking the moment to look for their meter to recognize how much of an advantage they have, all of that comes into the meter watching and to some extent of your own meter usage, part of our matchup action. Now, as noted, these bots don't lock that much, but the easy way to cause that to happen, although it notably also increases the likelihood that they will do down that road, is to just reduce everything but action 2 and possibly action 6, depending, and leave those 2 at 100. All this information will of course be on our website at t-mk.org/bots. Whenever we do anything in terms of releases, is not likely to be this Sunday, but quite likely to be the next. But as demonstrated, you basically should get used to the idea that these oppressive characters at least have the potential to make your life difficult after their super dashes, whereas not a lot of other teams do. So if you absolutely need to practice that, then, and it would probably have come up by facing them, you just pick the required character and you'll note that the same things happen the way they should, more or less. So for example, mentally going, this is 16, I should zone him and watch out for approach style technique. Works well until he switches to Broly, and then you have to care about something slightly different. Probably not too different, but slightly different. Focusing on his longer range, things he does if you leave him alone for too long, General annoyances and build-up of meter and so on. And once that is 16, immediately switch back to thinking about zoning, repositioning relative to corner, using up your meter in particular way. This can help you learn the flow of a matchup. When you want to use your meter, when you want to hold on to your meter, your opponent's perspective relative to their own meter, and so on. Since right now, Baldi and 16 are basically not using it, which means that as soon as Cell arrives, there's the chance you have to deal with Cell meter stuff. But similarly, Cell also has the capacity to cover them when they try to use it by happening to go into combination super and blasting when you try to vanish or similar things. Sometimes it still works, but often it gets messy. But this, for example, is the expectation, and if you were thinking of the game from that perspective, you would have been able to train yourself to expect it. A Cell on the other side of the screen dealing with other zoners is not necessarily that dangerous and might be tempted to go for that level too. Bot is capable of creating enough rare situations to cause you to end up learning the nuance of characters in ways that the CPU so far doesn't seem to do. And you can't necessarily learn online too easily. By the time you have learned the nuance, the person has beat you. What it cannot do easily, without a lot of tweaking, is give you perspective on a specific form of it. But with these separations that we have used, for the most part you can at least decide, is the character far from me or close? Have they pushed me out with pressure or not? And are they or are they not airborne? I can't necessarily give you how high they are airborne, but we can definitely make them airborne. So, let's move on once again. We're getting close to the end of this, but we're going to demo basically 2 more teams. Or rather, something similar to combinations of teams. Since we've seen enough Cell, and Nappa, while very interesting for this, does not actually do things that would require you to see them to guess what they are, we'll be skipping Just Vine's team and moving to Rune Siren's team. Mine is, we might see them at the end, but they're not that useful in terms of working this out. Oh, I see, it shifts the color if you already had it or something. Anyway, should do color 1 at least. Now we have seen Adult Gohan quite a lot, but he's a useful component. In fact, my strong suggestion is that if you don't know who else to put in a team and you just want to test against 1 or 2 characters, just throw in Adult Gohan because he's so good at making you have to think in a particular way and keeping you on your toes more or less. That's what she told. There we go. I think it's 2. No, it's probably 1.
Get ready for battle!
So once again, something somewhat familiar. This is another team that really doesn't benefit from the mashing special. In fact, for this particular team, in order to make the demo clean enough, we're actually going to turn it off. However, their air movement and back movement is decent, especially since Boo benefits from being in the air quite a lot. So we'll at least leave them with that. So Gohan will continue to do his thing, but we know that Mara can defend Gohan out. However, we do have to deal with Boo Ball and his relatively weird air movement. This team is not particularly complex in terms of messing with you assist-wise, but given their flow, it means that Gohan is often going to be the one in for various reasons. Benefits a decent amount from the assist offered by the other two. This was something we mentioned a while back, where in that team, assists are generally stronger than swaps, but swapping from Boo to Gohan at least tends to make sense, since you don't tend to need these assists as much sooner right away. Due to the rhythm and flow of this set, you're more likely to see Gohan in than others, which is useful in a lot of ways. You also end up dealing with that very relatively zoning style. And as noted, a lot less meter tends to be used. This is mostly because, again, Kid Buu doesn't have air supers that are easily activated. Since he's normally in the air doing something else anyway, the timing doesn't tend to lead to this. Whether or not a character in this bot does their air super has a lot more to do with whether or not they were getting into the air by something you did, or bouncing off you with their super dash. You also notice from mention that due to a lot of the interaction in this, despite the fact that they can functionally use Raw Vanish, it really doesn't happen that often. And here we have one more aspect of the bot that is relatively important. For various reasons related to input buffers and timing, when you use a super with a long animation, it is much more likely to be countered by the bot doing the same. Overall though, the better your defense, the more meter the bot will build. You can even use that as sort of a mini score for it. This is again not true for every single character combination in the game, but it's pretty useful to know that way. You should generally at least overall expect it. However, since Kibu is generally actually a slightly more aerial character and doesn't have a lot of moves in particular spaces, you can turn the special mashing back on if you really need it, or just accept the fact that he really does work like that as a character. You're supposed to play neutral with Kibu most of the time, because he will make you play neutral. And when he's not doing so, he will often, regardless of who else is in the team, call a lot of assists on you. Above all else though, you should recognize that it's difficult to force the bot to do particular things without changing the base setting. So it's very important to understand what each base setting is doing as a block or as a whole in order to achieve what you want when you're playing. Sometimes they can be random and continually do the same sort of move or combo, and other times they just won't bother at all. Fortunately, this is useful in terms of comparison to real players at least somewhat, but not necessarily so good if your aim was to counter a particular move. That said, for the most part, you should have it set up so that if you absolutely needed to work on a particular move, you could just find the button combination or the recording combination that causes the character to do that move, and see what else you can have on or off. For example, if you really wanted to deal with certain things, as mentioned, you can turn back on the slot 5 as noted, and this will restore multiple things. First of all, Vegeta will be more likely to use Big Bang Attack, and Boo will have a bunch more weirdness that he does. They will also of course use more standing special taps like that, but you probably still are okay with this depending on what you're doing. That said, even then there are no real guarantees that this will happen because of the interaction between moves. If you want Vegeta to do it, there are specific ways to set that up. However, as we all know, this unpredictability is actually a feature, not a bug, when it comes to our bots. And the key is to make sure that you can make them predictable, because it's much easier to start from unpredictable and go to predictability by changing some aspect of it. Similarly, the back dash is important because while a forward dash in this game is often a trap, a trick, something you don't necessarily want to be able to react to or understand that well, understanding your opponent's back dash, how far it is, how fast it is, whether or not it changes anything whatsoever about their hitboxes or hitboxes on retreat, are important things, and can often lead to you having trouble in matches if you aren't familiar with how a particular character gets engaged. So we do suggest keeping it, even if just for that. The current setup means that the bot is unlikely to catch you in Dragon Rush, and even less likely to try to throw you out when it does. But even this is possible, so please note it. But now, we're going to move into what may be the last, depending on what we end up talking about, but could also be second last if you end up looking at my team a bit. The mirror match. There are finally enough characters to make this complicated. Let's return to the arena. That doesn't even let you take it. Okay. I have no idea what color that's actually supposed to be. So forgive me if I get your color wrong. Now that we have the special button on, let's play a team that will let you see the maximum effect of having that input. As you can see from our zoner style characters, they actually do have a decent amount of use of just quarter circles into that Kamehameha motion, and you could increase it by reducing some other thing they were doing in order to make up that space. You can already see that due to the moves and movesets of this team, the bot acts a little differently, but also tends to demonstrate quite a bit of their relative synergy. But since it is a quote-unquote zoning theme, it is similar to the Beerus, Zamasu, etc., where you're not going to see a lot of very specific advances or pressure or tricky things that you can't punish. Just a bit more randomness in terms of what's actually available to them. This is again partially because of the animation length of their moves and the style of the character as a whole. Similarly, they build up a lot of meter because of the general lack of certain supers from the air, but not all. Since they similarly to Gohan also have a lot of strongly forward moving attacks, there's a higher chance of you getting caught off guard by their advancing moves. As we saw for a moment before, Goku, as in original Goku, also has an extra usage for that Wrigley Action 5, namely using his ground explosion style fireballs. We should expect basically standard things from except mostly standard things from Super Saiyan Goku. Their long range does help with this quite a lot though, and you are likely to get caught in that command grab simply because when used in part of a pressure string, Goku Black generally will make you think you should block that move and then you will be in trouble. Overall though, unlike our Street Fighter bots that are specifically meant to teach you how to play fighting games to some extent, or to get you used to very specific aspects of that game, this is more so meant to get you used to generalities, and through those generalities, then show you the small tweaks and differences of various characters. So we'll close out this stream by, as promised, at least showing off my team for a little bit. Don't expect to see too much because they are not built for this sort of thing. Oh, Piccolo. I gotten a good color for you lately, but I forgot what color number it was. Let's see if you can color one, because I don't remember your good one either. And as always, we will go back to our standard islands. And finally change the music. So I'm not going to be really talking about this team's performance at all, or what they're trying to do, or what they should do. But you can listen to it in the background while I made some general descriptions about other aspects of this bot. So once again, generally, your goal with the bot is to get used to tiny differences by character, mostly by starting from the base we mentioned, specifically Cell, Adult Gohan, and usually Android 16. Let's give slightly contrast in that setup, so that you can learn to deal with their various flows. Once you understand the standard flows of certain types of character through this, and recognize, okay, I actually have the reactions to do this thing, or that thing, or the other thing, you can then use that understanding or expectation of timing to switch the characters you're up against, and see what you get as a result. Some characters have longer reach, some have better options in specific spaces, and some will do more things from the air or less things from the air. When it comes to developing the uses of these things, to make sure that you get the most that you want, it is necessary to remember what each input set is for. 1 and 2 generally being for assists and supers, and therefore nearly, well, assists and specials, and therefore nearly never being turned off. 3 and 4 being auto combos. They can be tweaked in terms of how often they happen, but you often need them to learn much from a bot. And from there, we move into less required things, specifically Action 5, which is a bunch of taps of the special button in various timings, and Action 6, which is a different form of combo. You generally could turn this off if for some reason the characters you're playing have terrible crouch mediums or something. Finally, we closed out with crouch heavy along with a back jump and back dash, and a deflect into back dash, both of these being functionally retreat style movement options. If you need forward style movement options for some reason, you can in fact do deflect into forward dash and just change it entirely, since the back dash already exists. But you can do for certain teams just turn off entirely. Learning to tweak it in order to do exactly what you want, therefore, is a lot about understanding how to change these ratios so you can see more or less of something based on the characters you want to fight against. And we will be doing some research into this ourselves, but once again, it really may come down to teams and popular teams. So expect to see features more so based on supposed top tier characters, or teams that have become popular online because someone won with them, or people keep on hearing this character is great, you should play them, blah blah. Once again, I expect information on this to be on our website, t-mk.org, not this Sunday, but rather the Sunday after that. Basically the first Sunday in October. As for tonight, that ends our relatively long robotics lab. And for now, you can proceed to treat this as our disc guidance. However, we are likely to do this guidance itself next week. There will be a lot of repetition of stuff in here. But with a little bit more discussion about how exactly to input things more precisely. And other tweaks and specific modifications that you may have done in the following week. Next week, Monday, we are most likely having our mishmashing lounge. It may be a little slower or smaller, based on participation of those of us who are going to Red Bull Conquest tomorrow. And on Tuesday, we will, as always, have Guilty Gear the Tuesday train. Wednesday, content we are expecting under Night Ember, the equivalent of Sandbag Casuals for that move. Just going into ranked and seeing what happens, even though we have no actual online play experience. And on Thursday, we should be having Kame House Lobby, because presumably by then, the hype will have died down somewhat, and we will therefore be seeing less full lobby at our standard stream time. The Friday, as mentioned, will be the actual disc guidance for this, which brings us around to where I mentioned and finishes out the week. Therefore, we leave you with the Spirit Bomb. And that is all for tonight. This has been Rillian with Amara on the controller for Team 2MK. Enjoy your training and good night, everyone.